Yes, welcome back to the Sunrise Daily. As you've seen there, we're joined by the Honorable Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris Malagi. Good morning, sir. Thank you for coming on this morning.
My pleasure, Chamberlain.
So I assume now you've settled into the office.
Well, gradually.
It's been a while. But so what would you, tell us about your vision. What is it that you want to achieve in this ministry?
Thank you. Good morning to you and Nigerians. First and foremost, you will agree with me that trust in public communication has virtually broken down. And I feel, as Minister of Information and National Orientation, it is my duty to rebuild that trust. We know that even when Nigerians themselves elect their leaders, they don't seem to believe them.
Yeah.
Nobody seems to believe anybody that is in government or that is in power. And so, why is that so? Because people feel that the kind of communication that flows down from those in position of authority down to Nigerians is either not true or half true. And so what I'm trying to do is, first and foremost, rebuild that trust. People need to trust government communication. And once that trust is built, it is possible for Nigerians to believe once again in their government, to believe in the vision set out by their leaders, to believe in the prosperity that we all desire to have for Nigeria. This is my first mission. Second, because it is also Ministry of Information and National Orientation, it is absolutely important that we reorient Nigerians. Over the years, there's a gradual erosion of values of Nigerians about their country. Many years ago, Nigerians seemed to believe in their country. Everything about Nigeria, seemed to resonate with Nigerians. But over the years, it has, become almost, a commonplace to see that people don't believe in their own country. The Japa issue, all the issues of nationalism, value orientation have all broken down. And therefore, it is important for the Bola Tinubu administration to rebuild that. The Ministry of Information and National Orientation is set out to do just that. Rebuild trust in government communication, rebuild the trust of Nigerians about their own country, so that at least we can have a country that we all desire.
Well, some people say that trust is not something that you purchase off the shelf. It's something that is earned. I think a big question is how, since this is a thing that you have set out to do.
Well, I think that when you tell people the truth, when people come to know that those in positions of authority are telling them the absolute truth about what the position is, I think trust will come back. Of course, you can't purchase that, but you can earn it by telling people exactly as it is, and by telling it is bad, for example, when you say something and then you come back to know that what you have said is not true and you correct it. But it is worse when you know that what you have said is not true and then you continue to own it up. So my first mission is to rebuild that trust in government communication and for Nigerians to believe in themselves and in their leaders, once again.
Well, government communication is not centralized in just the Ministry of Information. Almost all the ministers are usually required to give an account of themselves, to communicate what their own vision is, as you're doing, and also, answer questions with regards to their own sectors.
Yeah.
You have very little control over how this communication happens. So when you talk about an orientation, are you going to be also impressing upon them the importance of truthful communication whenever it is they speak with Nigerians?
Yeah, we've already started doing that. I recall that there was a retreat for government ministers and permanent secretaries and heads of agencies that took place not long ago. At that retreat, I made it a point. Perhaps I was the only minister that was allowed to speak to my colleagues within a 10-minute period to tell them the value of truthful and honest communication. We're already beginning to tell them that, you have to say it as it is, truthfully, honestly. I think that it's not also a one-way traffic. It is also important that for those who are also consuming this information, also be truthful about their own perception of what is also being put out.
Yeah. So, Time and again, people look from the outside and then even from the inside, where they see that talking about censorship now and political influence, where broadcasters are often faced with this censorship pressure from out there to either align, especially when it comes to political times. How do you plan to address this kind of perception?
Well, it's not something that that is stress-jacketed. But what I can tell you is that it is important, first, for people to now know that this is the truth. This is where you are going. This is what this is. Now, of course, it's not something that you have absolute control over, like you have said, but it's also important that when you say something, you say it as truthfully and as honestly, with all sense of accountability. You put it out there. Let the person who is now consuming also, judge you from that standpoint. And that brings in the issue of orientation. You can't elect someone and then don't trust that person. But why is it that trust has broken down? This is the issue. If you say something is A, let Nigerians or let those that you are serving also come to believe that that is actually A. But if you say something and then they find out that what you have said is not the truth, of course they won't trust you. So it is important that this two-way traffic between those communicating and those consuming that communication are, aligned in the same direction.
So is that to say that this government will not be one that will put pressure on broadcasters or media houses to toe their line or align politically, as long as you just stick to the rules of the profession?
You can see that already happening. Who has been pressured? Which broadcast station has been pressured? Which newspaper house has been pressured? Nobody has been pressured to do anything. But again, it flows from the fact that you have to give them something that they believe is the truth. And that is why when you feel that you have made a mistake in providing that information, it is important to come back and say, look, wait a minute, what we have said is not true, or we have found out that it's not exactly as we have put it. Let's change this. So there's nobody that's going to be pressured. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is a Democrat, as you know. He's a product of communication, so to say, because he has relied over the years in his democratic journey on the media to also shape it as it is. So why will he now come back and say, don't do it this way? Nobody has been pressured, and there's no intention whatsoever to do that. We believe that you allow people to say things the way they are, provided that what they are also saying is also absolutely true. Truthfulness and honesty and responsibility in government communication is two-way.
Let's talk about social media very quickly, because intentions take on a new dimension when you introduce social media to the mix. It's now become like a double-edged sword, liberating many people, giving them prominence, but it's also broken monopolies. Nobody has sole management of information, as it were. There are now those who, deal strictly in peddling fake news. There are those who are using all of these other tools for negative reasons. And I'm sure it's something that also gives you concern. How do you intend, or what exactly is the policy that you're thinking about with regards to social media?
First of all, let me say that the social media issue and the issue of fake news is not just a Nigerian problem. It is a world problem. I've sat in conferences and seminars outside this country where the issue of fake news is also the dominant issue. We are dealing with it in our own way, but as it is, the United Nations, through UNESCO, is bringing out, some kind of, operating guidelines for the social media that all countries, hopefully, will adopt to check that. Much as we give freedom, for people to operate, to say what they want to say, it is also incumbent for them to know that that freedom comes with enormous responsibility. You don't just say you want freedom, you want press freedom. Yes, you have press freedom. Nigerian press is largely free. But what we are saying is that that freedom will also have to come with enormous responsibility. You cannot be allowed to say what you want to say and then be allowed at the same time to say what is not true. That cannot be freedom. That is responsibility.
What is going on with the transition from analog to digital broadcasting, the DSO?
You know that the DSO started many years ago, and it's unfortunate the situation we find ourselves. When I came in, I tried to find out what the issue of the DSO is, because, I mean, I looked at the books, and I saw that DSO has not achieved more than 15% of what it set out to achieve. That is unacceptable, considering the colossal amount of money that has been put out there. So we are trying to revisit that issue to make DSO work. DSO has to work. I mean, countries that are not as endowed as this country have switched over. Why shouldn't we? Why would Nigeria continue to operate an analog platform? It's unacceptable. And I would tell Nigerians that within the next few years, DSO will work.
All right, let's bring in our colleagues from Lagos.
Honorable Minister, you do not sit in a very, very comfortable, should I say, a convenient position, especially when it comes to a territory where you have also operated over the years. And, you know, when you visited the NBC, part of what you were reported to have said was that the regulator should work with the media so that they are not perceived to be punitive. Would you say that the regulator had hitherto been punitive? Or is that what you were saying?
Well, I didn't say that they were punitive. What I'm saying is that there is an absolute need and importance for all of us to work together, because this is an industry that we all belong to. It is important for the media and the regulator to come together so that we can at least fashion out something that works for our country. It is important that the regulator regulates within, common sense. You can't just say that, you want to regulate and then the intention is to gag or to stifle, freedom of expression. But at the same time, it is also the responsibility of the regulator to ensure that much as this freedom is being allowed to happen, responsibility, that freedom must also be upheld. If you give so much, you also expect so much. That's the only thing that we are saying. The regulator and those that are being regulated should work together in the interest of this industry, so that Nigerians can have a better society that we all desire to have.
That's been a little, I don't know, depending on who is viewing it. Because in terms of content regulation, broadcasters have a way, professional broadcasters have a way of ensuring that they maintain the confines of professional practice, ethics, and all of that. But in a situation where regulations for broadcasters get in the way of balance between creativity, commercial interests, and regulatory compliance, it gives the broadcaster a lot more work to do, such that content along the line of local content, quota, decency, political broadcasting and advertising are being regulated by the regulator in a way that infringes on the viability of the organization, of the practice and professional ethics of the broadcasters themselves. It calls to question a lot of things. Do you see a need for an intervention at some higher level or some reconsideration by whoever is regulating whatever part of the media?
Well, you see, we are coming back to the same thing. What I try to say all the time is that the regulator has to do his job. It is important. I mean, even in your own house, if there's no regulation, there will be, breakdown of law and order. You wouldn't be allowed to say what you know is not true or what can incite people so that there will be conflict. That is not to say that government is trying to say this and don't say this. No. Whatever you want to say it responsibly, say it with all honesty, and be accountable to that. So regulation is something that has to happen anywhere in the world. But that does not mean, that does not equate to gagging or stifling freedom of expression. I know that it is a difficult thing. Sometimes there's a very thin line between regulation and control. The administration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu is not interested in that kind of control. What we're interested in is that people should be allowed to say what they want to say responsibly, so that your freedom does not also create a problem for the other person you want to address. That's the simple thing that we're trying to say.
The challenge here, Honorable Minister, is in the balance. Sometimes the regulation is a function of someone's subjective perception of a professional judgment. In that regard, then the media house has to work on eggshells in order not to offend the system, as well as remain as responsible as the Constitution authorizes it to do.
Yeah, we have always said that there's always this thin line between regulation and control. Now, it is important that whoever is regulating should regulate with responsibility. But it is equally important that whoever is also being allowed to air his views or to say as it is also says it with the utmost sense of responsibility. I think that the responsibility is not just that of the regulator, it is also for those who are regulated. That is why I said it is important for all of us to sit together so that we can find a common ground for all of us to operate. The basic thing, the most important thing is that nobody is trying to gag or control anybody. What we are simply saying is that, look, do your work, but do it responsibly so that your freedom does not also become a source of problem for the society. That's the only thing we are saying.
You began this conversation with trust, and messaging is quite important. Saying you intend to build trust. You talked about how the average citizen does not trust government, and you'll understand why. And being a practitioner for decades, a lot of people will say, just maybe this is going to be a litmus test for our industry as well. But let's talk about this statement you made that the president did not tell you to come and lie, and you have a covenant that you are going to always tell the truth to Nigerians. And I'd like you to speak to just one example of that. There's been a back and forth about whether or not this government has stopped paying subsidy. The NNPC had said that, well, subsidy has gone. We know that clearly, the price of petrol is not what it ought to be. The World Bank, for example, says remove subsidy totally. So let's start from there. Is subsidy gone totally or not?
I think the subsidy is gone. The president has told Nigerians from day one, from the very day he was sworn in, that there won't be a subsidy. It is because subsidy has gone, and that is why you have so much money available for government to do so many things. Of course, it's never enough. Subsidy is gone, and it is gone for good. Of course, there are instances where government needs to come in to see that things don't go so bad. That's the responsibility of government. Every rule will also have its own, self-adjusting mechanism, so to say. But subsidy, I can assure Nigerians, the subsidy is gone. If you look at the monies accrued to the federation account and the kind of money that the states are receiving and what that money is being put to, you know that everybody desired for subsidy to go. Now, what do we do with that subsidy, I think is the next question. If subsidy is gone, how do Nigerians get that benefit? I think that is the subject of discussion. We need to move to scrutinize that so that Nigerians will have the benefit of the subsidy that has been taken away.
So that's to say, right, so that's to say that the World Bank doesn't have the full picture if it says that subsidy should go entirely or we're not getting the true story of things. But one thing that excites me, and I must say this, Honorable Minister, is this values charter which you've talked about, and there's a committee, I imagine, that is in place. But I remember that the previous administration had this change begins with me thing that, you know, it introduced, and a lot of Nigerians did not receive it well. And they were saying, well, change should begin with government and not with Nigerians. So what is the plan with this Nigeria's values charter? We've talked about how we need to have values, set of values as a people. So it's sort of a social contract between the country and its citizens. So what exactly is the plan? And will this change begin with Nigerians or the government itself?
Okay, let me say this, that the National Citizens Value Charter that we talked about is it's not just mere slogan. The difference this time around is that we are reviewing, if you will, what the social contract is existing between Nigerians and their country. There is so much that Nigerians are expecting from their country. There's also so much that the citizens, you know, are also expecting from their leaders, and then the country itself expects you to behave or to also align yourself in a particular direction. For example, if you say you want to behave decently, what is that decency about? And that is why we talked about the need for us to convene a conference for the first time, so that in a very long time, so that Nigerians can talk about the issue of citizenship. Who is a Nigerian? How do you expect a Nigerian to behave? What does a Nigerian expect from his country? What does the country also expect from a Nigerian? If you have a child, for example, in your house that is growing up, what are you going to teach that child? How do you expect that child to, to grow up behaving? How do Nigerians also expect that child to behave maybe when he becomes an adult? It's a two-way thing. It's a social contract that we all have. Nigerians expect, something from their country, and the country should also expect something from Nigeria. So it's a two-way traffic. It's beyond the slogan. We're trying to say that, look, let's have a national conversation. We've been talking about, for example, a conference on security, on the economy. We've had national conferences in the past talking about how to restructure this country, how to deal with each other politically. Have we sat down to also discuss this concept of citizenship, this charter, this relationship between the Nigerian and his country? What does the Nigerian citizen expect from his country? What does also Nigeria expect of his citizens? So early in the coming year, we hope that we will convene, that the president himself will lead that. We'll have a robust national discourse talking about how Nigeria and Nigerians relate with each other, so that we can have something that we say, okay, this is now the social contract that we have with our country, and the country also has with its citizens. It's beyond slogan. I think this is for real, and it is important for Nigerians to at least put that trust there, believe in that concept. Let's come together, discuss it, and see how we can move as a nation. We cannot continue to operate in an environment where there is this almost a total erosion of our values. When something is said, Nigerians are the first to say, is this true? Why is this true? Well, are you sure that they are saying the right thing? The only time you find ourselves, coming together and believing ourselves, a situation when you have, for example, sports, the Super Eagles is playing, everybody wants to be a Nigerian. But beyond that, values have really eroded, and we need to restore that. We can't afford to continue to go the way we are going.
Because nowadays it's heartbreak with the Super Eagles. But I want to quickly follow up, excuse me, on the issue of social media, which you had raised earlier. You talked about how the UNESCO is coming up with guidelines.
Yeah.
Are you saying that we're waiting for the guidelines of UNESCO before we come up with our own policies?
No, already. You see that Nigeria has already begun that process. There is already something before the National Assembly.
The process of what?
The process of looking at the social media in its entirety. Now, I'm careful to say a process, because any word you utter will mean that you want to say you want to gag, or you want to control, or you want to
see that
yeah, already the media space is
social media regulation.
Yeah, regulation has to come in a way that does not, and I want you to mark that does not take away that freedom from those who are operating. I'm very careful to say that I'm an advocate of press freedom. Freedom has to happen, but we keep saying that freedom has to come with enormous responsibility.
Right. So you say there's something already before the National Assembly?
Oh yes, there is. There's something before the National Assembly, and everybody is a contributor to that.
What is it? A bill?
Yeah, there has been a bill that has been in the last administration and is still there. And Nigerians are expected to debate that so that it will not just a government thing. It is something that Nigerians, the operators, everybody have to jointly own.
Okay. Just before I wind down, Honorable Minister, before this new leadership of NBC came, you spoke about broadcast license, that they should do something about reduction of broadcast license. Could you talk about that? And are you talking to the customs or government about taxing media houses that are bringing in broadcast equipment because it impacts on their overall costs of operations?
Well, let me begin with the license. I'm an advocate of reduction in the license fee. If, for example, you want to set up a television station and you are asked to pay huge sums of money, at some point 500 million naira. Of course, that was further reviewed to about 250 million. But I keep saying that you don't have to take the money from the person who wants to invest in a business before he even makes anything out of that business. Why don't you make the licensing fee low so that the person can come in, create an enabling environment for him to make so much money so that both of you can grow together. As he's making the money, you can then find a way of participating in that process so that Nigeria can be better for it. I am not an advocate of saying because you want to set up a media organization, a television station, for example, instead of you to worry about equipment, worry about staffing, worry about content, you are worrying about the fee that you pay to government to set up the center. I think that is wrong. We are working on that, and Nigerians will expect something different.
Taxing broadcast equipment.
Well, only yesterday at the Federal Executive Council, we had a conversation around waivers and taxes and all that. And some of these taxes are already in the law. There is not much you can do about it. Yeah. Some of these waivers are also in the law. So much as you want to tax, you need to tax in a way and shape that will not impact in the operation of that business. Broadcast equipment are very critical equipment. Information broadcasting is, goes out to educate, to entertain, and to also even propagate government programs and projects. So you need them to have this coming, the equipment coming, so that they can do their jobs. So if there are ways and means that the Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation, for example, will contribute towards ensuring that people operating within this environment, find it easy to operate. Yeah. I think we'll do that.
Absolutely, because there's no, there's palliatives given to different people. Industries too, like broadcasting houses, media houses, they have to have at least to ensure that they stay in the business and not just kick them out. But there's this thing that bothers us too when our colleagues, we go for assignments. The way, security agencies treat journalists at events. They're almost always brutalizing them, harassing them. And then maybe this one you might need to speak to the president about it. When his security agencies, they jam almost all the networks in that place. So it's difficult for you to transmit your signals. So are you likely to look into these matters?
Yeah, I think that being the practitioner myself, I think it is wrong for security agencies to stop or to stay in the way of media people doing their job. It's absolutely wrong. We have the right, the media owners or the media operators or the media practitioners have the right to report government activities. I mean, by the way, if for example, government is organizing an event and no media covers it, what's the value of that? How do they come to know about that? So it is important for us as government to look at that, to see that the media practitioners are allowed to do their job. Now, the issue of jamming facilities at events, we talk to security agencies about that. It is important to do, but you also know that it is important also for us to have a secured environment.
Absolutely.
Not just protecting the president or political leaders, but even protecting journalists themselves. It's important that security operatives also look at the situation in a way that will allow both the media people and the people they are reporting to have a safe environment to operate in.
But sometimes it just looks as if they're not even willing to have that conversation. Because, I mean, the media definitely will know there has to be a country before there's media. Absolutely. So most times they're on the same page about doing some of these jobs. So media needs to see that they're willing to even listen. Because if that's the first thing they see, then there could be solutions about it.
I think this is the change that you will expect. We are talking every time. It's not fair for me to come on the screen and say this is what we are saying and discussing every time. But what I can tell you is that the president is giving that listening ear. We talk to him all the time, and he listens. And each time we tell him what we think should happen within this environment, he listens and is very willing to cooperate and to allow things to go the way they are. Some of these mentalities are actually coming from the military era, and gradually we are solving that. We need a little time. It will go.
All right, Honourable Minister, I'm sure that, I don't know if ministers look forward to this MOU that was signed with the president, because he says
measuring their KPIs, right?
Yeah.
Right, he said they have to perform. Are you looking forward to that?
Oh, yes. I mean, why shouldn't you perform? You were given a job to perform. And it's not just for the president or government to measure you. There is this app that is also being developed that the Office of the Advisor on Policy is also working on, that will enable you, Chamberlain and Mopi and everybody to also measure by himself. I think that you've been given an assignment. It is important that you are measured. It's important that people see you to be doing that assignment. You ship in, you ship in, or you ship out. It's as simple as that. I mean, on this job, you are asked to perform ABC. If you're not seen to be performing that, what are you doing there? I think it's the right thing, but that's not to say that there is one, the way sometimes I read the commentaries, as if there is one policeman or policewoman sitting somewhere to, no, that's not how it works. It's a whole gamut of operational module that is there, and every ministry has already been given that template, so you know what is expected of you based on what you yourself have said you want to do and what government also expects you to do. They didn't just come out to say, look, it's not an examination, it's a collaboration, it's an engagement that will lead to better result for Nigerians.
So I know you've said that, look, you're there, you have an obligation to tell truth to Nigerians.
Yeah.
So what is it that, beyond that you want to, at the end of the day, because time flies, before you know what's happening, it's 4 years or 8 years if the government wins again and you're still there, what would you like to be your key policy that you like to be remembered for this industry?
One, say I will want to return trust to government communication. One, it is also important that we bring a regulation that will help media operators to do their job and for Nigerians to also hold them accountable. And then, if you look at the public broadcast facilities that we have, for example, the NTA, the FRC, and the Voice of Nigeria, and News Agency of Nigeria, they rely on technology to do their jobs. We are looking at that, ensuring that they get the tools that they need to operate. nowadays, content is key. How do they develop those contents? What do Nigerians expect, for example, from the public
40 minutes.
If you look at NTA, for example, and you look at channels, there's a huge difference when you look at the screen. We need to clean up that screen. It's a public media organization. We also help private owners, like channels like all of you and all of us, to see that we have one of the best media atmosphere and tools to operate in this country.
I'm very, very happy about the fact that you are taking up the issue of citizenship. Yeah. And you say that the conference is going to come up in January or
yes,
so.
Yeah.
Is it in January?
Early in the new year, yes. Most likely before the end of January or maybe early February, depending on how we arrange it with the presidency. But he is already in support of that. He's expecting that. He's driving it. In fact, we want the president to drive it so that it will be seen that it is coming from the number one citizen, and all of us will also key in.
Because this issue of national cohesion is also a matter of grave importance. And people think that how information is managed, and as you've also spoken about, the place of orientation in all of this is also very important. How are you looking at the issue of national cohesion, and how do you intend to address it, especially after elections that were really, really, really fractious?
Yeah, it's really a very serious thing to look into. The issue of national unity, national cohesion is absolutely important for everybody. And like Chamberlain said here earlier, we need to have a country before we can even have whatever it is. So if we don't come together, I think our diversity should be a source of strength. We need to come together. I agree that, after the elections, Nigerians have become so divided along so many lines. It is the hope and the desire of this government and through the Ministry of Information and National Orientation to see that Nigerians come together once again. It is absolutely important for all of us. I mean, divisions along ethnic, religious, political lines, differences exist. They will always be there. But how you manage them and steer everyone towards the same direction is critical, and we hope to do that. I know it's a tall order. The divisions are sometimes very deep, but nothing is impossible. We need to continue to do that, to build that trust. But the key thing is, I think government has a responsibility here, and that's where the president is leading that. Do what Nigerians expect. Government is trying to do that. And then government is also telling Nigerians, give us a chance. Let's join hands. Let's come together. Irrespective of our differences, be it political, whatever. Let's join hands to see that we steer this country towards the unity that our founding fathers have laid out. If you go back in history, I mean, there have always been those divisions, but the different regions had very healthy competition. So why is it now? And I said at some point, you keep talking about Sir Ahmadu Bello, you keep talking about Azikiwe, you keep talking about Awolowo. Now, how many Awolowos have you reproduced? How many Sir Ahmadu Bello Sardaunas have we reproduced? How many Azikiwes have we reproduced? If we have reproduced them enough, why would we be talking about this? There will be healthy competition. There's nothing wrong with healthy competition among different states or different regions. But let that competition be that will drive us towards the kind of prosperity that we all desire and that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is always talking about.
All right, Honorable Minister, we need to go to a quick break, but we'll be back and wrap this up in just a moment. Don't go away.
So So let's continue with our conversation with the Honorable Minister for Information and National Orientation, Mr. Mohammed Idris Malagi, joining us from our Abuja studio. Thank you for your time and, of course, for the discussion. It's been quite enlightening. For a lot of Nigerians right now, the major issue for them is their livelihood. The daily is 104 million Nigerians now in poverty. That's another 14 million Nigerians who have become poor in 2023. So, I mean, you forgive Nigerians if they don't trust government, because successive governments come and promise them all sorts of things to lift people out of poverty. Sadly, people are being thrown into poverty. Is this government, how touched is this government by the plight of these Nigerians? And what information do you have for them about this renewed hope? How soon is that hope coming? So at least they can hold on to something, as much as we talk about government policies, you know, the ethics and values as a nation. But people need to eat, they need to survive this period. What information do you have, Honorable Minister?
Well, thank you. And I think that if anybody, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has always said and has never shied away from the fact that he is aware that Nigerians are suffering. And he said that severally. At one instance, he said, it is like a woman who is undergoing labor. The pain is so much there, but if with some patience and perseverance, the baby will be delivered, and then there will be relief and joy will now come. In the immediate term, you know that on October 1, the president said he was going to give a wage award of 25,000, for example. Labour came up after that to say, look, we don't want 25,000. We want something higher than that. I was part of that negotiation with Labour. We had a robust conversation with them, and we went back to the president, and the president said, well, let's look at the books, and the numbers were worked out, and the additional 10,000 naira was added to that to bring it to 35,000 naira. That's number one. Number two, the president also said that he's going to give 25,000 naira to 15 million poorest of the poor families. That is also ongoing. You recall that government gave some money to states to enable them to cushion in the short run some of the hardship that they are going through. The government also provided funds for assorted fertilizers to be distributed across state, because the thinking of the federal government is that the suffering is not just at the center, it is in the state. That's where the people reside. So it is important that whatever you do, you work with the state governors to achieve that. And it's happy to note that some of the state governors are also doing so much to do that, to cushion that effect. Also recall that because of the removal of fuel subsidy, and because the cost of transportation will have to go up as a result of that, government said, let us now have compressed natural gas, CNG buses that has already been rolled out. I'm happy to say that even some of the states are already moving in that direction. Borno State, Ogun State are also taking the lead among states to do that. So there are interim measures that government has put in place. But of course, this is not something that we say rely on in the long run. Why government is working on more sustainable, more robust, and more deep engagement in that direction, these immediate reliefs have come to Nigerians. Of course, it's not enough. Government is not pretending that what it is doing is enough, but it's one step at a time. You start with those little steps, and then you move towards a more robust intervention and enabling environment for people to now come out of that hardship. Coming back to your question, does the government feel that Nigerians are experiencing some hardship? Yes. Government never pretended about that. The president himself has owned up to that. But is government doing something also to alleviate that? Yes. government is doing so much to alleviate that. Every day, the policies that government are putting in place, you know, the CNG, the fixing the forex regime, government, president traveling around the country to make sure that there are investments and coming to the country so that we stabilize the economy for the benefit of all of us in the long run. So yes, there are hardships, but there are also measures being taken to alleviate that. These hardships are not intended, but of course there are a direct consequence of the removal of fuel subsidy that we have had. But Nigerians are going to be better for it in the long run.
Well, Honorable Minister, you began by talking about trust, and definitely every Nigerian would want to believe what you're saying, because if we don't have strong enough institutions to trust, then we don't have any hope for good governance. But, you know, when Nigerians are asked to trust, asked to do certain things, and they still see the political class taking certain actions that are not particularly in consonance with the texts or, you know, the things that we hear government says, it draws a lot of questions. So help us marry, for instance, the issue of national orientation in the light of actions that people might perceive are kind of questionable. One example is the appointment of people into the resident electoral commissioners who are highly sympathetic, some of them card-carrying members of political parties, which is clearly against the law. Another one is something that the political crisis that is happening in Rivers State. These issues tend to help make people further distrust government, be it at the federal or at the state level. In the light of national orientation, how do people receive these issues, particularly these instances that have been cited?
Well, you talked about first the appointment of resident electoral commissioners. I know that a government's desire is to have credible people in critical places like the election management body. I'm not aware of, for example, somebody who can be said to be not trustworthy that has been appointed as a resident electoral commissioner. Maybe some have been perceived to have some form of inclination one way or the other. But I think that if the president or government sees somebody to be outrightly partisan in that regard, government will not accept that. Your second point about the issue of rivers. I've been asked this question only yesterday at the State House after the Federal Executive Council meeting. And I said the rivers issue is a political issue coming out of Rivers State. What has government done, the federal government, for example, done? Did government say that the people in Rivers should have crises among themselves? I mean, was it engineered by the federal government? I'm yet to see that. It is easy to speculate that because some of the actors are seen to be people who are associated with the government at the center, and there is this tendency to think that the federal government, you know, is involved in the crisis in Rivers. Federal government cannot be involved in the crisis in Rivers State. It is not only in Rivers State that you have political crisis. That is a state with, you know, that has an opposing political party. In Ondo State, for example, the president has had to intervene, to wage into this kind of crisis, to bring people together, to reduce that friction, reduce those tensions that exist between them, and they are members of the same political party. The fact that it is happening in Rivers does not mean that the federal government is the one that is orchestrating a political crisis to come out. I have not found that evidence to say that you know, it is the federal government that is engineering the crisis in Rivers State.
All right, it's a good place to anchor. We've been speaking with Mohammed Idris Malagi, Minister of Information and National Orientation. Thank you very much indeed for your time here today, sir.
Thank you, my pleasure.
All right, let's read some comments just before we go. This one comes from George about Rivers politics. He says, one of the major reasons why the masses have not enjoyed the dividends of democracy in Nigeria is simply because our politicians only play politics of bitterness and are never there to make better choices. I honestly feel sorry for the citizens of Rivers State who are the real victims of all this crisis going on there.
Well, philosopher SBS sends this tweet, or is it an email now? He says, the bomb River State House of Assembly is a crime scene. The act of demolishing the House of Assembly is tampering with a crime scene. Whoever is involved in the demolition has committed a crime. Well, that's the view of this philosopher here.
We'll take a look at Dixon Ecker's message. I'm not upbeat about the World Bank projection of 11 trillion revenue for Nigeria by 2025 from subsidy removal. This is because the removal of subsidy has caused so many problems for the country, and most people are struggling to survive, dealing with hyperinflation, and the mail goes on and on. Thank you very much, Dixon, for that one.
Well, Professor Munokade, we got your mail as well, but we're completely out of time. Thank you so much for sending in those messages this morning. And that's the show today. Thank you for the privilege of being a part of your morning. I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yeah, try to rest, right? I'm Kayode Okikelu. Goodbye.
It's almost Friday. Just make the most you can of it. Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
I'm Chamberlain, so goodbye.